Welcome in, one and all, to another episode of the Payne and Drain Show. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this podcast, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. And Alex, how are we doing as preseason is winding down? Cutdown day is near. It's getting closer by the day. The regular season approaches. How are we doing?
Better just because we're getting closer to the regular season and the end of the preseason. We've only got one more of these games to watch in a year where we were saddled with one more than other teams with the Hall of Fame game. This past weekend's was pretty rough from a viewing standpoint, but we just got one more to power through, and then 2 weeks from 2 weeks from tomorrow will be the first regular season game between the Eagles and the Cowboys. So it's getting real now, up around the corner.
Yeah, it's like football season's hitting when all the fantasy drafts are happening, and all of my drafts are happening over the next like 10 days. All five of them. I am in way too many leagues, but there's gonna be a lot of craziness for that. I gotta get up on all my sleeper picks and all the end of the radar guys. But for today, we are going to do a little bit of a different episode than we've done the last few weeks, mainly because, as Alex just mentioned, the preseason game that just happened was a little rough to watch, but also the storylines coming out of that game are a little similar to what they've been over the last week or two. So there's really not as much to talk about on that front. So we're also going to augment this episode by adding in some 53-man roster predictions that we'll get to later in the episode. But we do have to start with some updates on the injury front. The first being a bit of a weird one with rookie defensive end Ahmad Hassanin, who picked up a pec injury in the preseason, or was it the preseason? Yeah, in the preseason game or the practice after.
Yep.
Dan Campbell originally came out and said he was going to be down a while, which Dan Campbell doesn't mince words. When he says that, he usually means that it's either a season-ending injury or the player will miss at least half of the regular season. Then that evening, Hassanin on Instagram revealed he did not need surgery, meaning we don't actually fully know what is going on with him and whether or not he is going to miss significant time, whether or not he's going to be put on IR, whether or not they wait until after cutdown day to put him on IR so he only misses 4 games. What is your read of this situation?
I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a good sense of what's happening. It doesn't seem like he claimed on his Instagram he doesn't need surgery, so that's probably good, but I don't really know what the process of healing would be there. At the end of the day, you just hope he can play at some point in the season. It's a bummer for him in the same way it is for Straw and Dan Jackson, who we talked about previously. But with Hassanin in particular, it seemed like he was probably going to get snaps in the regular season with the way he was performing in their situation at edge. But as I said repeatedly, if you are relying on a 6th-round rookie to be playing any real role, then there are deeper problems. So unfortunate, but we'll see what happens, I guess. He wasn't someone that you could reasonably count on to begin with. So hopefully he is able to contribute at some point.
Yeah, as it stood, he was edge 4 probably on the roster at this point. We still are awaiting some sort of finality with the Zadarius Smith situation, whether or not he is interested in becoming a Lion again, or whether or not the Lions go seek someone else after cutdown day to kind of bolster their edge room. But with Davenport, who is perennially injured, Josh Pascal, who is perennially injured, and a bunch of other guys like Isaac Ukwu, Nate Lynn, that sort of player, there definitely would have been a role for Hassanin to at least, like you said, get on the field. So super bummed for him. Hopefully it's just a short-term thing and he gets back. The other one, this is a more positive update. Actually, it's entirely positive because Mekhi Wingo was activated off the PUP list. He is back. He is going to get back to practicing over the next few days. I don't think he'll play in the preseason game. Would be cool if he did, but he's going to be ready for week 1. And he actually has quite an interesting role given the fact that he is a pass rusher first and foremost, and the Lions don't really have a whole lot of that on the interior. So, what in your eyes is the importance of having a player like Wingo back?
First of all, it seemed kind of like sudden to me. I don't think there was the expectation this was going to happen, and then all of a sudden he's available. I really liked Wingo quite a bit last season when we saw him. Certainly had a little bit of pass rush juice, is what it seemed like. It wasn't as strong in run defense, but that's fine when you consider the situation with Aleem McNeil injured, where you have Reader and what we've seen from Tyleik Williams suggests that there's probably not going to be a ton of pass rush from those guys, at least uh, probably this season for Tyleik and Lopez. Those are more of the run stuffing types. Lopez can pass rush a little bit, but Wingo right now with McNeil injured probably is their best pass rushing DT. Um, and that's helpful, especially for a team that we've talked about their edge situation, right? That they are a little thinner there. We've talked about Derek Barnes being a guy that can contribute from the Sam position in pass rushing capacity, but Wingo could too. I don't expect it's going to be a big role, but that's a guy that can rotate in and play, 15 snaps, a lot of them on third downs, passing situations, and could give him a little bit of something. He was just really starting to come on last year when the injury occurred, so I'm really excited for this news, honestly.
Yeah, I really do want to see what he brings as a pass rusher. I anticipate he's going to play mostly three tech on pass rushing downs. He could also kick out, play some 4-eye, maybe some five. We'll see. I know the Lions like to use him as he's a bit of a smaller DT, so he also has a bit of flexibility to play kind of that big defensive end spot potentially. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting how Kelvin Shepard uses him or how Shepard augments the pass rush issues. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. I know there was some buzz around having the linebackers being able to check out of blitzes at the line depending on the look. So it seems like Shep is going to be aggressive in the way that we've seen Aaron Glenn over the last few years, which makes sense. He was mentored by Aaron Glenn, but very curious to see how he weaponizes Wingo as part of this pass rush because for as much as Aiden Hutchinson we expect to dominate, it also cannot just be the Aiden Hutchinson show. At some point, you're going to need someone else to provide some pass rush. So, happy that Wingo's back. We'll see how that materializes. Again, he's going to be playing in week one, so that is a massive, massive boost for this D line. So, now shifting over to the preseason game against the Dolphins, we should just start back with the quarterback situation because we really got mostly more of the same. Granted, Kyle Allen had such a weird game in my eyes because there were three instances where he was inaccurate and left a throw high, too high for his receiver, and it was incomplete as a result, entirely because of a bad throw. And then I looked at the end of the half, and those were his only three incompletions. And so it's tough to get a read on him, honestly. I was a lot more frustrated, and yet I still saw some of those signs of the confidence that we were seeing in Atlanta, where he was willing to give his guys a chance to go make a play. And he definitely still looked like the more stable option at QB2. So, what did you see from Kyle Allen first before we get into Hendon Hooker?
Really, just kind of a continuation of the last preseason game. First one in the Hall of Fame game, he was really bad. And we were on this show sort of saying, we don't need to see any more Kyle Allen. We know what he is, blah, blah, blah. And we wanted to see more Hooker. And now, these last two games, it's kind of been the reverse where I want to see less Hooker. And the reason is because the offense can only really function with Allen out there. If we want to see something from the tight ends, we want to see something from the wide receivers, we want to just see a drive where running backs are getting snaps, it's kind of has to be Allen because right now it's just night and day between the two. So I would say that he's probably got QB2 wrapped up. I mean, it would require, I think, Booker playing the game of his life, contrasted with Allen maybe reprising. Remember that like Nathan Peterman game where he threw all those pick six for the Bills? Like, it'd have to be a colossally poor performance, I think, to shake the situation at the moment because Allen's just been a lot better, and he was a little shaky out of the gate with those high overthrows that you mentioned. Then he really settled in, and he allowed us to see some nice moments from Tesla and Jackson Meeks. We can talk about in the wide receiver section, but that's really just because when Allen is out there, he's giving everyone else a chance to succeed.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, he really found his groove. Finished that half of preseason play 14 of 17 for 124 with 2 touchdowns that we will talk about shortly. And then Hendon Hooker, once again, 6 of 13, 61 yards, just way too reliant on his first read, check downs, all that. And then the game fittingly ends with a interception on an incredible play by the Dolphins defensive back where he's just on the blitz. Hooker instantly goes to throw it, and the DB just jumps up, bats it, picks it off himself. Kind of a fitting end based on what Hooker had been doing thus far in that game. I, I really don't have that much more to say about Hendon Hooker at this point. Like we'll talk about it later when we talk about the roster predictions, but I really did not expect the QB2 situation to be this extreme for Hooker to like go from being the what we assumed was the shoe in to being just this bad, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's not great. Um, what we've basically seen is the running ability and not a whole lot else. I mean, in this game, he had a scrambled touchdown that got called back. Otherwise, 6 of 13, 61 yards, the game-ending interception. It was a nice play by the defender, but uh, again, just sort of in line with what we've seen, and it's just more of the same. He holds the ball way too long, and the offense just kind of bogs down and doesn't protect the ball, and there's just kind of same thing week after week. There's been no progression into preseason so far, and as it stands now, it's the same question we talked about last week, where how do the Lions weigh whatever they believe in him? Do they still believe in him? And if they do, how much do you weight his draft position versus the actual abilities here? Because it's going to come right down to the margins. And at the moment, based on actual production, there's really no argument for him to be on the roster other than the draft pedigree. So that's going to be a very, very telling decision coming up. And why this upcoming preseason game is kind of Hooker with his life on the line a little bit, at least as a Detroit Lion.
Yeah, so switching over to the running backs real quick, because I do just want to mention Sione Vaki got some run in this game, and he looked, I mean, pretty good. 5 carries for 30 yards. He also had a really nice special teams play where just perfect hit, helmet on the football, knocks the ball loose. The Lions unfortunately don't recover, but Vaki continues to show that he is kind of the Swiss Army knife that can do a lot of different roles for this team. So good to see that. Craig Reynolds, 6 more carries that I know you probably hated, but it's not 13 at least.
Yeah, six more than we needed. At least they gave Sailors and some of the other guys some looks later in the game.
Yeah, and then let's move on to what everyone really wants to talk about, which is the wide receivers. We'll start with the easy one because this hype train has been going on for a long time. Isaac Tesla with 4 more catches for 41 yards and another beautiful touchdown on a fade route in the end zone. Just goes up, dunks on the DB. Beautiful positioning. Just he has such a good awareness of how to position himself for these jump ball situations and these contested catch scenarios. Always catches the ball with his hands, never his body. So just honestly, it was art like that. The route that he ran to, it wasn't the cleanest running of that route that I've ever seen, kind of the little stop and go, but it worked to get him to the spot he needed to get to go up for that ball. Allen gives him a chance, like I talked about earlier. He just has trust in Tesla to go get it, and he comes down with it and does the nice little Cupid bow and arrow celebration, which I guess, side note, is it's okay to do a bow and arrow celebration as long as you're aiming to the sky and not at an opposing player, which is so stupid. But yeah, now Tesla's been getting some run with the ones in practice over the last few days. There's a clip going out where he beat DJ Reed, which by all accounts has not been something that a lot of guys have done routinely this summer. So starting to see Tesla earn his way into not a starting role necessarily, but into some play with the ones, which is super important because he needs to develop that chemistry with Jared Goff at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's at the point where I don't really need to see Tisla in the next preseason game. I think we've seen enough. I think he's pretty well situated, and I'd like to see him just working with the ones and get promoted to that point at which we're going to take a look at the guys that are actually on the bubble. I mean, coming up, there's going to be a decision about do they want to keep a sixth receiver, and if they do, who will it be between Meeks and Lovett? I think those are the guys that should probably get the focus of this upcoming preseason game, and we don't need to see a lot more from Tisla. I mean, the biggest talking point, I think, at this stage with Tisla is that battle with Tim Patrick for receiver number 3, which we talked about previous weeks, and each week I think the chance of Tisla jumping Patrick just keeps going up, and each week I've sort of been revising it upwards, and as we've continued to not hear a ton of great things about Patrick in camp, it's getting pretty interesting. We'll see how much progress Islam will make, and it's all just a matter of how does it actually look in a regular season game against starting corners. That's the big question for Tisla, but he has really made a case for himself.
Now, the other guy that you did briefly mention there, Jackson Meeks, also had another wonderful game. 7 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown of his own. That touchdown coming on actually just a really well executed play where Shane Zylstra is running a clear out route. He takes out the DBs and Meeks is wide open. It was like a 4th and 7 or something too. Like the Lions, like it's preseason, so I understand that just go for it. Who cares? But good play from Meeks. He has just consistently over the last 2 weeks been finding these gaps in the defense, whether it's on deep shots, whether it's in the red zone, whether it's over the middle, short, intermediate. He has just been impactful at all levels of the defense. So uh, I don't know what to make of how of his chances of making the roster at this point because Lovett obviously had the injury, and I think he's kind of taken a back seat because of that. He only had 2 for 14 in this game. So, first of all, what have you liked seeing from Meeks, and what do you make of where he stands with the roster right now?
Oh, Meeks has just been consistent in these games. I think he was the one that he had the deep shot right against
Yeah.
Atlanta the previous week. So yeah, he's just been making plays as a touchdown in this game. He was the highest receiver in this game. I mean, he's outplayed Lovett, and obviously Lovett had the injury. And I think the big question there is the special teams value. They like Lovett more on special teams. Meeks maybe not as useful there. There's also just the question of do you need a sixth wide receiver? Like this
That's
is
the thing.
that's the ultimate roster math. I would personally lean no, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably lean Meeks, but I'm not as clued in on the special team side of things. He's deserved it more. And yes, Lovett was a draft pick, but he was a 7th rounder. That's not really that important of a thing. 7th rounders are only some of the time do they make the roster in the first place, and a difference between a 7th rounder and a UDFA, and in the case of Meeks, is not that great. So I don't think you should factor that part into it at all. You're just going to look at what do they give the team, and I've just liked seeing Meeks' consistency week to week. He's really been one of the standouts of this preseason.
Yeah, and then the last player that I was going to touch on is pass rusher Isaac Ukwu, who picks up a sack after which that drive, he had a sack that was taken away by a penalty. Oh yeah, by the way, so many penalties in this game. It was unbelievable. There were 22 accepted penalties in this game, and that doesn't count the ones that were declined. That doesn't count the amount of flags that were thrown and picked up. The officials in this game were absolutely out of control. I never, ever want to see whatever that was again. That was brutal.
Yeah, I was really mad about it. It just made the game completely unwatchable. I mean, you don't want that many flags in a regular season game. Who wants that in a preseason game? And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't make any real sense to me.
Yeah.
Like we're here to watch a game, see some guys that are on the fringe, and then get the game over with. We don't need this isn't a competitive game. The teams aren't really trying to win in any meaningful sense. So I just don't get it. I also didn't like the amount of like weird stuff the Dolphins were doing. Like they're doing a lot of like little screens and swing passes, and it just kind of felt like they were getting a little outside what you expect in the. You want the teams to just keep it really vanilla, right? Not anything fancy. You don't want to show anything from your playbook, and they were doing a little bit of a little trippery in this game, so that was a little out there. But the flags were so bad, just
Yeah.
just horrific. I I don't know, set a quota of like or like a ceiling, right? You can only throw max of 15 flags in a preseason game. Use them wisely, right? Like just something cuz this was horrible.
Well, and it's not just the volume, it was also what was being flagged. Like there were some really minor holding calls that were be like the refs were just very quick with their whistles. But back to Isaac Ukwu, I mentioned that because he had a sack wiped out by a very soft penalty against Grant Stewart. And then later that drive, he gets that sack back. It was on a fourth down, absolutely demolishes the left guard. The Lions had brought a blitz on that play where Anthony Pittman is going to come in unblocked. And Ukwu is in front of him, and he's supposed to just take the blocker, clear the lane for Pittman. And he beats his block so quickly that he still beats Pittman to the quarterback. I really am starting to try. I think Ukwu, barring any free agent transactions from the Lions, I think I'm starting to lean towards Ukwu making the roster. There's other guys like Nate Lynn in there who could also challenge for a spot, but again, it's back to this conversation where the Lions don't have enough pure pass rushers. They don't have enough guys that can just get pressure. They have a lot of run stoppers, but they just need someone that has some juice off the edge. So, where do you stand on kind of that depth edge spot right now?
It's all bargain bin hunting. And there's been I mean Nate Lynn has flashed at points in the preseason. Obviously there's Ukwu. He played regular season games last year, right? Like I remember that name.
I
I'm,
believe he
I'm
did.
pretty
I don't remember. He wouldn't have played many snaps, but he definitely played in some capacity.
I could have sworn he played last year. Let me look that one up. Yeah, he played 2 games last year
Yeah.
because I remember him out. I remember his name out there, which gives him a leg up. I mean, we've seen Al Qadim Muhammad as well. He's going to make the roster more than likely. So then you're looking at these other guys. I mean, Agude is another guy that's been mentioned in this conversation. I, they've all had their moments. Like it's better than not having your moments. I'm not really like stoked about any of them, but whoever you choose, I think will have opportunity to be in the mix. But my take on Edge has been what it's been since we did the first show, which is that the fix seems like it has to come through a signing after training camp, either like a waiver wire pickup or obviously Zadarius Smith. Don't need to talk about that one again. We've been talking about it for months now, but that just feels like the most logical explanation or solution to the situation. But you do need to have that depth. We saw injuries last year, and Uku and Lin, I think both have looked viable enough to be that final spot to keep a seat on the bench warm until you find some sort of legitimate solution.
Yeah. So that's all the guys I wanted to talk about. Before we move on, is there anyone else that you wanted to mention from this game?
Yeah, it wasn't a great offensive line game, I felt like, especially from the tackles. There were some issues with pass protection there, so maybe a little bit of a step back from guys like Manu and Jamarco Jones. And then on the defensive side, there was a bit of buzz for Keith Cooper. I don't have like a lot of defensive tackle takes, but I saw some praise for him. Roderick Martin scored well for in the PFF charting of this game. He did have a couple of offsides or neutral zone infractions, so kind of a trade off there. It seems like a long shot to see him making the roster. And then this is relevant for our roster discussion, but Ian Kennelly played more snaps than Lawrence Strickland in this game, so that may be tipping the hand a little bit about how the fourth safety discussion is going.
Yeah, and I think we will talk about Kennelly in a little bit. So, with that being said, let's get over to a roster prediction of sorts. I think the best way to do this is just to go through every position group and just say the guys that you are leaning towards making this roster, because at the end of the day, we can probably safely pick 50 of these guys. There's probably three or four that that are not like safe bets at this point. So we'll start at quarterback. I am going to lean on the side that the Lions are not going to let this experiment die just yet. I think they will keep three quarterbacks, and I think people will be mad about it. I just, for as much as I personally am starting to be out on Hendon Hooker, not that I was ever really in, to be honest, but now that I'm like starting, I very begrudgingly put him in there just because of the draft capital, because we know he's a project quarterback, even though he's on the older side. I just can't. I don't think that the Lions are ready to pull that trigger yet. So I'm gonna have them keeping three.
Yeah, I think it's now it's really close, but I do kind of agree with you that they're probably gonna keep Hooker and just swallow through it. But if they come down and he's cut, I wouldn't be surprised. Like they have shown at times a willingness to make guys earn it and make the tough decisions. So I don't think it's beyond consideration that could happen. But at the same time, they do like their developmental guys. So it feels like a pure toss up, and it may come down to this weekend's game for Hooker.
Yeah. Running back, this should be the easiest one. There, I have them keeping four: Gibbs, Montgomery, Reynolds, and Vaki. I don't think there's much more to that position group than that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I when I went through each position group, I wrote down like who was on the fringe, and I didn't even have anyone on the fringe for this one. So
Yeah. Wide receiver, this is another, again, we're talking, will they keep a sixth? I'm going to err on the side that because I have them keeping three quarterbacks, I'm going to have them only keeping five wide receivers. If they do cut Hooker, I think it would be to keep a sixth wide receiver, but this is pretty easy for the top five are pretty easy. Amon-Ra, Jameson, Tim Patrick, Tesla, and Khalif Raymond. How do you feel? Are you taking a sixth?
not really. I mean, we went through this last year, right? With was Isaiah Williams the sixth that they kept last year? I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember if he was the fifth or the sixth, but if he was the sixth, he didn't last long. And just logically speaking, the Lions throw to their running backs, they throw to their tight ends. Just don't need that many wide receivers, and especially when your depth is what this is, because you have your three starters from last year back, and you have a rookie who's really looking like he's fighting for playing time. And you have Khalif Raymond, who is a guy that is going to get some looks in every given game. So this is five guys that you can really put out here. There's no filler here, and I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to put a guy that really doesn't have a path to any meaningful snaps on this roster when you can beef up on the defensive line potentially or somewhere with your linebackers, etc.
Yeah. Tight end, this again is pretty easy, mainly because Kenny Yeboah got hurt, so he kind of lost that battle by default for tight end three. So I have Laporta, Brock Wright, and Shane Zylstra. I don't think they're like you could maybe Zach Horton was
Well,
playing some fullback, but I don't know how do you
yeah,
feel about that.
that would be the question would be Zach Horton at fullback. I remember there was discussion about a fullback-ish guy last year. Did they keep him on the opening roster? I'm trying to remember. But there was a similar guy to Zach Horton last year, and then they didn't really end up doing anything with him if he made the roster. But it's something they've certainly considered at times in the past. They haven't really had like a. Remember Michael Burton was like the fullback of the I don't know if that was late Mayhew or early Bob Quinn era. They haven't really had a guy like that necessarily, but they've
It
certainly
was
thought
Kabinda
about it.
was the
So,
last one.
oh right, Kabinda. Yeah, I forgot about him. He did play a little bit. That was probably was that like early Holmes, like 2021 ish. He
Yeah, I
still
think
around for.
he might have been around for 22, but he was definitely because I remember he was around for Hard Knocks season. So
Okay, right. Well, he
but that would
played.
have been,
He was like a he was originally a linebacker, wasn't he? And then they like moved
yeah, they
him to
transitioned him.
fullback.
And now, well, now they're doing the same.
Yeah,
Well,
so
remember Rodrigo was playing fullback last year too. So
oh right. So I mean it's clear that they've seen some usage for a fullback at certain points. I don't really see it happening, but you can't rule it out, I guess. So I'll put Horton outside, but I will keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I think I would. What have they been doing? Like for goal line, they don't really necessarily use I form that much. I guess they would probably just use Bruck right there and have an extra tackle come in, or I don't really know, but just
Yeah, I mean
something
they go
to
6-0 a
flag.
lot in those situations. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the offensive line, this is where things can get a little interesting. I have them keeping 9 guys. The starting five, Decker, Mahogany, Glasgow, Ratledge, Sewell, are super easy. The two backup tackles, Manu, because he's a project and they've invested a lot into him and they are obviously going to keep him. And Skipper, obviously, is the sixth offensive lineman. Then for the interior, for now, I have them keeping Coyote Awashika, but with the important caveat that it is only until Miles Frazier is healthy. Frazier will take his spot when he's back. And then, since we have not heard about Tate Ratledge at center since they've committed to, like, they it doesn't seem like they're committing to cross training him that much. I think they're going to keep someone who is more of a designated backup. So I'm going to have them keeping Kingsley Aguakon. So, and just because he plays center a lot more, and I think he would be a more natural backup to Glasgow at this point compared to Ratledge. But how do you feel about how the O line is going to shake out?
Well, I think as you mentioned, there's 8 guys there. You got your starters, you got Manu, you got Skipper, you got Owashika, and it's really just that ninth spot. And it kind of comes down to me, Guakon against Jamarco Jones. That seems like the best candidates for the final spot, and it just comes down to what you need more of. But I think Aguakon probably makes a little more sense, especially with Jamarco Jones not having a great last preseason game. Jones is a tackle. You've already got Skipper. You've got Manu. You don't really want to use him, but he could play it if Skipper went down. I think it makes more sense to lean Aguakon, but this is another one where it may come down to the final preseason game this weekend.
Are you consider like would you consider only doing 8?
I think 9 just makes sense. I
Okay.
feel like you can never have too much depth on the OL personally, so
Yeah. So switching over to the defensive side of the ball, starting off at defensive tackle. This is one where a lot of people want to keep 6. This is where the Keith Cooper buzz comes into play. I am going to go against that though. I have DJ Reader, Tyleek, Roy Lopez, and Makai Winger are the easy ones, and I'm gonna have them keeping Pat O'Connor over Keith Cooper. Although I would entertain either Keith Cooper over Pat O'Connor or just keeping 6 on the interior.
yeah, this is an interesting one because, as you mentioned when you said the easy ones, there's about 4 guys that you stated that are locks, and then I kind of think they'll go to 6 DTs, and then you have maybe 4 options to pick there for the two between Cooper, O'Connor, Smith, and Martin. Those are the 4 names I wrote down. If you're only keeping 5, then you'd keep one of those. I think O'Connor makes the most sense to keep out of the 4, and it's simply because we saw more of him last year, and it wasn't incredible, but he played enough to me that that should give him an edge over the other players in this category. And he wasn't great, but he made a few plays. I mean, he had a sack or two in those games. He'd have like 1, 2 plays a game where he kind of ripped through. His run discipline wasn't great, but I would give O'Connor the edge. And if that final spot, it feels like Keith Cooper has earned it the most. I'm curious about how they evaluate Broderick Martin with his kind of signs of life these last 2 preseason games, but I'd probably go O'Connor and Cooper if I was keeping 6, and just O'Connor if I'm going 5.
Okay, and then Edge. This is a little weird because we don't exactly know what's going on with Hassanin. I'm going to assume, based on Dan Campbell's words, that he's going to be out, and I'm not going to factor him in, like that he'll be on IR of some
Yeah, I
kind.
mean, at the very least, the pup list to start the year.
So the 5 I'm keeping 5. I've got Hutchinson, Davenport, Josh Pascal, who I assume will be ready for the start of the season at least. Al-Qadim Muhammad and then Isaac Ukwu is going to be my fifth that I'm keeping. Of course, with the caveat that they'll probably sign someone else, so Ukwu might not be safe. But based on what we have to look at so far, it. I know you talked to. It's the same thing about the depth. Would you keep like six edges, or or 11 total defensive linemen?
I I'd keep just 5 at edge. I might go 6 DTs, 5 edge. I don't know. That I guess that depends on if you think Wingo can kick out a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
don't see a big reason to want to keep like Uku and Nate Lynn. Like it just kind of feels redundant there, and you might as well
yeah.
keep someone a little more impactful at a different position. But as you mentioned, someone's probably getting bumped off anyway, so this is kind of for naught. If you
Yeah.
let's say you had Zadarius Smith plugged in there or someone of that, ilk, and then it's Uku or Lin for the sixth edge, that makes a little more sense, but I still don't know. I just feel like Lin and Uku are guys you want to stash on the practice squad. And then
Yeah,
when
I think I
the
agree,
day
but
when the day comes that Davenport is inevitably injured, then they get the call up from the minors.
and then when Pascal gets hurt, they get to start. um, moving on to linebacker, this is starting to become really set in stone for the top five, where Anzalone, Barnes, Campbell, Zach Cunningham, and Grant Stewart seem all relatively locked in. And then for the sixth spot, I am keeping six, and just because Trevor Nowaski has played multiple roles, and I he's not horrible. He's also got some ability to rush the passer a little bit. So I think makes the most sense as a backup to Barnes. And considering that the Sam role is very important to the Lions, I think they're going to prioritize keeping an extra guy at that spot.
Yeah, the thing with linebackers is they play usually such a big role on special teams
Mm-hmm.
that those are guys that are usually gunners of some kind and or tacklers on kick returns and things like that. And we know the role that at least Grant Stewart will play on that unit. So that's kind of the reason to take a sixth. Uh, the five are obviously locked in: Anzalone, Campbell, Barnes, Stewart, Cunningham to me, and then I think it's still probably Nowaski, just because
Until
again
Rodrigo
we've seen
comes
more
back,
of
at
him. Right?
least.
Yeah, I mean Rodriguez will take a spot when that happens. When Rodriguez comes back, the depth at linebacker is the best on the team. I mean, it's probably the
Yeah,
best on
that
the
is
team
insane.
already, but that's ridiculous. But Nowaski, I look at a lot like I look at Pat O'Connor and some of these other guys, where
Mm.
if you played, significant snaps last regular season, that gives you an edge to me. It gives you a leg up over what we see in the preseason. They have more familiarity with Nowaski. I would keep him as the sixth if we're going with a sixth linebacker.
Yeah. Then moving over to corner. Now, I chose to keep only five defensive tackles because I have six corners staying on the roster. Terry Arnold, DJ Reed, Amik Robertson, Rock Yassin are the easy ones. Khalil Dorsey, they value too much on special teams, I think. And then I'm also going to have them keeping Eric Hallett as well. There's been a lot of buzz in camp, and he's been looking pretty good in the preseason games, making plays. So I'm gonna go with the extra corner just because of how often these guys get hurt.
Say that again. Do you have five corners or six corners?
Six corners.
Six. So Dorsey's
So
on your
yeah,
list.
yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I think I'd probably lean to beef up on the line and not keep Hallett at corner. But if you were gonna keep a sixth, that's definitely who it would be. He has had a good camp. I will say on him, kind of this is a weird tangent, but it's strange to me that the Lions now have a guy that's an Eric with like a name ending in T, because there's Eric Schlitt, the Pride of Detroit
Mhm.
guy, and then the name Eric Hallett, and I'm like, wait a second, like, oh, that's the player, not it's like I already have an association with like an Eric or like a like a German sounding T name. already. So that's just a little confusing. But yeah, I don't think I'd keep a sixth corner, but that's definitely who it would be if you did.
Well, we got near the end of the list and we finally have one difference on our roster predictions. So there you go. And then safeties, I have them keeping four: Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Avante Maddox, and Ian Kennelly. Now, obviously, Maddox and Ruckusen kind of are interchangeable at corner and safety, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm listing Yasin as a corner and Maddox as a safety. And then Ian Kennelly, who we mentioned earlier, I think has the leg up to be the fourth safety. I still don't love what the depth at safety looks like, and I would have them strongly consider someone a little bit better than Ian Kennelly if someone was available after the after cutdown day. Wink, wink. Kyle Duggar. Wink, wink. Um, but yeah, those are my four.
Yeah, I have no disagreements there. Kennelly has the edge on Strickland to me, and then I mean we have the same three special teamers I would assume with Fox, Bates,
I
and Hogan Hatton, the long snapper.
I don't even know if there's anyone else competing for those jobs. Like, is there even is Michael Badgley still around, or like, who is there another kicker? Like,
I thought he was, but I haven't heard anything really about it. So I mean, looking at it all together, I wrote down so you have 46 guys that I think are locked in, and then I felt like because I had four DTs, four edges written as locks, so then you're going to
yeah,
take at least one more there. I had 8 offensive linemen as locks. I think they'll take a ninth. I had three safeties down. They'll obviously take a fourth. So that gets you to 50. So it's roster math. It's really just like three spots, and it's really just a question of third quarterback, which is obviously Hooker, versus sixth wide receiver versus sixth defensive tackle versus sixth edge versus sixth linebacker versus Horton versus sixth corner. And you just kind of pick those out. Those are the spots on the margins at the moment. I don't really foresee any surprise cuts. I mean, we're going to be one.
uh,
Uh, Tim
I
Patrick?
no,
Zilstra?
no, no.
I mean, that
I don't think Patrick's job. I Zilstra maybe. I don't think Patrick's job is in any danger though. Like, I think week one he's still your starting X receiver.
I would agree. I'm just saying if there was a stunning cut, those are the most likely names I would come up with. But it's right on the margins. I would probably lean six DT, six linebacker, and eight. Yeah, maybe it's right there. Right, we've gone through all these
Yeah.
positions, and it's down to the last couple. But it's one of those things where we make these out to be a big deal, and then season actually gets going, injuries pop up, some guys get brushed off, and then we just kind of forget about it all. Like
Yeah.
it one or two guys that are in discussion become a player, and everything else just doesn't really matter in the end. So,
Wow, great selling point for this podcast. Hey, welcome to our 53-man roster prediction where nothing really matters. So,
I mean, it's we have to kill time in preseason, but like it's the nature of preseason in that
yeah.
we watch these games, we scrutinize all these guys, and then at the end of the day, the Lions will be a good team or a bad team based on Aiden Hutchinson, based on Jared Goff, based
Yeah.
on starting OL. That's what this is really all about. So, honestly, going into this last preseason game, I'm just really looking at Allen and Hooker one more time. Like that's the most tangibly interesting thing. Everything else is just kind of on the fringes, and we'll watch to see if Hooker can get it together. That's the main selling point of watching this game.
Yeah, like at this point, I think the only change I would consider is if Hooker doesn't show any improvement in this final preseason game. I think I might be a little more comfortable leaving him off, but I do prioritize the depth at DB a little bit more. Like I have 10 DBs, 10 D lines, so again, we're splitting hairs with all these, but that is our 53-man roster prediction breakdown of sorts. And aside from that, I that's kind of it for this episode. I think so. Alex, I believe like you kind of gave a closing monologue there, but is there anything else you want to say before we wrap?
My main thing is that I don't want to see a lot of penalties in this upcoming game against the Texans. Let's get this thing Get this thing over with. It's the preseason's kind of interesting because if you remember in the old days when there were 4 preseason games, you would have the third was the dress rehearsal,
Yeah.
and now there isn't even really a dress rehearsal. I mean, Stafford used to play in most of those, and nowadays the Lions don't even bother. I think Goff played in a couple of preseasons earlier in his Lions tenure, but it's just slowly been whittled down. And the fourth game was always like Labor Day weekend, and it was the one where you see the guys on the fringes. And we're kind of now back to that with this. No starters of any kind will be playing, and it's up to those guys on the edge. And we'll see what happens, I guess.
I do kind of want to mention now that the five-time off-season champion Chicago Bears put their starters in for a half, and they just absolutely dominated the Buffalo Bills. And now Bears fans are really loving this Ben Johnson, even though it's a preseason play sheet and they were playing their starters against backups. And I just really, I really love the NFC North fan bases are so toxic, and it's so amazing.
Yeah, I had the game on the other night, the Monday night game, Bengals against Commanders,
Oh,
and I think Burrow and Daniels both played a little bit of that game, and I
yeah.
was like, wow, that's interesting. I haven't really seen any starters play in the Lions games.
Jameer Gibbs might run for 300 yards against the Bengals. That's I like the that game's gonna be like, oh wow, the Lions offense against Burrow and Chase. It's gonna be so exciting, and then the Lions are gonna run the ball 45 times, at, and they're just gonna have like 40 minutes time of possession. Like that game is going to be something.
Yeah, here we are again, trying to talk about real football instead of
Yeah,
the fake football. So we're
exactly.
almost there. Next
Um,
week we'll be rounding the turn for the home stretch.
Exactly. So that's going to be it for this episode. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with us. Make sure to leave a review and follow the show on podcasting platforms. Like and subscribe if you are on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, and you can find the show at Payne and Drain as well. We'll see you guys next week after Cutdown Day. And until then, have a good weekend. Enjoy the final weekend of preseason, and cheers, everyone.